And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Homelessness encompasses a range of physical living situations, such as unsheltered or absolutely homeless and living on the streets or in places not intended for human habitation. Emergency sheltered, including those staying in overnight shelters for people who are homeless, as well as shelters for those impacted by family violence. Provisionally accommodated, referring to those who are accommodation is temporary or lack security, tenure, or finally, at risk of homelessness, referring to people who are not homeless but are in current economic and or housing situation that is precarious and does not meet public health or safety standards. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 1992.
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at homeless. Homeless in that a person doesn't have any place to go and is actually literally sleeping on the street or beside an air duct or something like that. It doesn't appear as though there's as tremendous a problem as there is in some of the inner city places. But if you're referring to homeless in that people are staying in places that are not fit for people to stay in, or they have too many people staying in one apartment, then there's a tremendous problem. Not so much in that people are sleeping on the street, but that people are sleeping in inappropriate places. I've known a number of people who, for one reason or another, are not able to find suitable accommodation, and they're cramming 6 kids and 2 adults into an apartment that was made for 2 or 3 people. That, in a sense, is a homeless person. They're doing without what we would consider a necessity. There are a few people around town who don't have a place to sleep that I know of personally. Some of that is their own doing, unfortunately, because they've been kicked out of a lot of places because of things that they've done. One of the major things that I've seen in Terrace is that there is no place for people who are socially unacceptable. In that, I mean, they need somebody to look after them. They need somebody to tell them to take a bath. They need somebody to make sure that they get fed properly. They need somebody who's going to be there regardless of if they throw a temper tantrum or if they do whatever. And there's a need for something like that, because there is, of the people that I can think of, 5 or 6 that are in that category, you know, that wander the streets, that don't have a place. Every night is a new kind of destination for them. The other people who would be considered homeless are people who come to Terrace looking for work. They get here and they find there is no work. There's some of the great myths of Terrace that the logging industry just hires people off the street, and mushroom picking makes you rich overnight, and all of those other things. People arrive in Terrace and find that they can't find a job, and then they look for an apartment or someplace to live, and they can't find that either, because it doesn't matter who you are, you can't seem to find an apartment in Terrace. And so they end up sleeping in their car, if they're lucky to have a car, or a couple of kids were here in late February sleeping in a tent, and so they were lucky to have something. But those are homeless people in a sense, but they're also transient homeless. You don't get the same inner core of homeless people like you would in Toronto, where I was last, where you would actually stumble across them as they slept in doorways and under the bridge and by dry cleaners where the heating vents come out.
The Salvation Army dedicates a good part of its resources to helping those who have no place to go and no food to eat. But Heft admits those measures are largely temporary.
Well, if a person does come to town and they need a place to stay, we do a few things. First of all, we don't have the money to be putting people up in hotels. We could do that for a couple of days, and then we'd be broke. We first of all refer to them to the Department of Social Services, which is really their mandate to provide housing. That's what their responsibility is, if it's available. Now, there's the other problem is that when you go to social services, they say, go find an apartment. When you find an apartment, we'll pay for the rent, which is good. But then try to find an apartment. You know, that's the difficult part. Then there's a provincial after-hours number that we sometimes will give out to people. And then if all else fails, we will put them up in a hotel for a night or two. But then after that, there has to be a decision. Are you going to stay in Terrace, or are you going to move on?
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. In 1977, the BC Wildfire Service Rapid Attack Program established itself in Lower Post, BC. 2 years later, the program relocated to its present location in Salmonar in order to be centrally located for a majority of fires that require rapid attack response. But first, let us return to the conversation with Lieutenant Mike Heff.
If you move on, the Salvation Army has places in Prince George and Prince Rupert that men can stay. Women in Terrace can stay here with their children. There's a place that they can stay in. But of course that breaks up a family, and it's not really what this home is geared up for. So really there's not very much of anything. It's a Band-Aid treatment at best. And I've suggested to a couple of the folks who are homeless in Terrace that they move on to one of the larger centers, Edmonton or Vancouver or someplace, where they can get the type of care that they need, and yet they don't want to do that. They want to stay in Terrace. And this is their home, and you can understand why a person wants to stay where things are familiar. So there's not, as far as the homeless go, you know, we would also provide them with some food, but of course, if you're sleeping in a tent, how are you going to cook it? You know, if you're sleeping on the street, how are you going to open the can? It's a difficult situation.
And the situation is difficult everywhere. In Aldergrove, for example, teens are finding themselves living out of doors and out of home.
I ran away because, I didn't like what they were doing. They're, telling me what to do and all that. I didn't really like it. I wanted to go and do what I want.
He doesn't care what I do no more. I just don't have to come over if I don't want to.
How old are you?
Me, 16.
Where are your parents?
Parents in Vietnam.
I think they're too strict, that's all. I don't like living there.
But they're hanging on with the help of Reverend David Rathman, who gives them breakfast and a place to spend a few hours every day. However, he admits that's not enough and wants to do more.
I think if we can take proper discipline and love and care, put them back into the school, and support them as a community together with the church, will change their lifestyle. We're trying to get some homes started, emergency shelters, and then my vision is to have a large youth center in town.
Here in the Northwest, the homeless problem has the same root causes as it does across North America. The advantage is that the problem here isn't as serious yet as in major urban centers. And Lieutenant Heff says the problem can be successfully dealt with.
The answer to this is not in the government, because we rely on the government too much sometimes. It's in individual people who have the ability and the wherewithal and the financial resources to build an apartment building, to build some houses and rent them out.
The rapid attack crew swings into action when a fire is burning in rough, rugged terrain, accessible only by helicopter. This is often on mountainsides, but can also be on plateau areas where there's heavy brush cover. Dan Henschel is a command spotter based in Salmon Arm. He was in the Northwest to help conduct exercises for members of the Prince Rupert Regional Fire Control. Crew member Travis Kreischer and Prince Rupert Regional Fire Suppression Coordinator Bruce Hutchinson explain the steps they take once they're preparing to attack a rough terrain fire.
So he's got the door open, he's selecting his site, and he's maintaining the main rotors clear and the tail rotors clear. And once he sees his site, he'll tell him to hold, and then he'll clip in the first propeller.
Yeah. So he's in constant communication with the pilot, the command spotter. Okay, so here comes the rope. See, he's got the rope. The way it's coiled to it, it's designed to drop without ever tangling. So how high are they there, Travis?
They're about 100 feet.
Okay. See, he's constantly checking. He's got a pattern and a routine, a safety check that the command spotter is doing as well the whole time.
He just gave him a signal.
Yeah.
Now he goes out into the skid, hangs there in suspension, and now the command spotter will give him the down signal, and then he'll unlock himself there, turns to the rear, and fends off. Once he's past the skid, the command spotter is going 3/4, half, 10 feet. On the ground now, pulls the genie down, starts giving slack because the helicopter will go up and down, and he unclips himself from the rope.
The whole idea of the RAP attack is to get at fires before they grow too large to handle. The chopper pilot makes sure to hover at a discrete distance so his rotors don't actually fan the flames they're trying to put out. Next comes the gear.
You notice the flashing or the hand above the helicopter signal. It's just signaling the guys on the ground to see if they're ready. And this is how most of our cargo comes out of the helicopter. It's hooked up to a link in the fuselage there, and then it's down by the same descent device that we use for the guys. And it's controlled by a hand signal. This means, you know, just starting 3/4, see the guys down there doing it, halfway, section, and then this is down and unclip.
When he clasps his hands together.
Yeah, there, see, he does it there. So he knows it's down, so you just don't all of a sudden have your equipment crash into the ground.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The term man's best friend originated in the American Supreme Court in 1870 when a talented lawyer named George Graham Vess defended a man who deeply loved his coonhound named Old Drum. Vess argued that the neighbor killed Old Drum for trespassing. The neighbor took the life of more than just a pet. He killed an important family member. Let us return to archives to bring you this story from 1992.
We don't teach your dog. We teach you how to train your dog.
The basic thing I've learned is it's not really training the dog, it's training yourself to be consistent in your commands, and if you're not doing that, it's just really confusing to the dog.
Dog training can be compared to putting a child through school.
Everyone walk past your dog and stand at the end of the lead behind them.
This class is equivalent to elementary school. The dogs are usually around 6 months old. It's their first taste of the classroom, a good chance to mingle with other dogs. That's a lesson in itself.
First night at classes is almost trauma for the dogs because there's all these strange dogs and all the dogs are barking and carrying on, and all of a sudden Fido, instead of running the household, is being made behave.
You're taking a dog for a walk. If they've been taught around other dogs, it's no real big deal for them to deal with passing a dog in the street. Or, the dog that's traveling in a car, and there's some dogs that are almost going through the window at other dogs. Chances are those dogs haven't been to obedience class and having worked among dogs.
Educators say this class is a must if you want a good, responsible pet.
We teach you the basics of heeling on lead. That's where the dog walks quietly at your left side and sits when you stop. And to come when called, and to what we term finish, go around to the heel position, to sit stay, to down stay, to stand for examination, and that's very handy when you go to the vets or you've bathed your dog and you want to dry it. You make it stand stay and you can do it, or if you want to brush them. And all these exercises are good canine citizen exercises, what every dog should know.
The schooling doesn't stop there. Next comes what's called Companion Dog Excellent, or if you like, high school. Then for the ambitious, both the pet and its owner, an even more advanced course called Utility Dog.
And that's where they do a lot of work with no leads, hand signals, jumping, directed retrieves, and that type of stuff, and it's like college.
Post-secondary ed.
Yeah. And then I want you to make sure your dog stays down and doesn't bother the other dogs.
This novice class is held once a week for an hour, but there's more to it than that. That's right, homework. And Laxton says if you forget to practice at home, trouble may arise.
And if you put in the time that's recommended, your dog learns an awful lot. If you don't put in the time, then your dog just doesn't learn because you're not teaching it.
How much time are we looking at then?
We suggest 2 15-minute sessions at least a day.
This terrace woman agrees. Linda Roberts has 2 standard poodles. Both 2-year-old Poppy and 8-year-old Frankie are enrolled in obedience school. However, they're a bit ahead of their classmates. Roberts has been doing exercises with them since they were little. She has spent many hours laying the groundwork.
Often I make a big game of it, and often I do sit, come down, and their tricks, and it's not really a training session per se, but yes, they learn, and it's a way of pleasing me. So it's sort of a daily routine.
This particular class was a little more obstinate than usual.
It's one of the more difficult classes I've had since I was here because we've had a number of very aggressive dogs in both the beginners and in this novice class. And just cycled that way. And the next class could be just perfect angels.
But when the dogs do get serious and pay attention, they work hard. So hard, they deserve something in return.
And then stroke their heads, remember? And the reward can be a verbal praise, a nice little look down at it. Good boy, good girl, that's what I want. And they also work, when they're doing the wrong, they get a correction. So when you make a correction, you have to praise them and tell them which is a verbal, or petting them is another reward. And that's what they work for.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
The New Jersey Devils actually get their name from a legendary creature who purportedly resides in the Garden State. Popularly known as the Jersey Devil, it's a monstrous winged being described having hoof feet, a horse-like head, and a pointed tail. The Jersey Devil is said to lurk in the Pine Barrens, a region more than 1 million square acres of dense pine forest that comprises 22% of New Jersey's land area. In this final segment of Open Connection, Jeff Sharples of New Jersey Devils.
Bring the puck out with you. Good work. Next, guys, let's go.
First year in quite a while that I thought that, instead of just staying stagnant, I moved ahead with my career again. And I got a good opportunity in Capital District, New York Islanders farm team, and Butch Goring gave me lots of ice time, so it went great. I think that this is the first time, in a long time, that I'm really looking forward to getting things going in the fall again. Not that I didn't enjoy myself before, but things kind of came together this year.
Let's talk about the fall. Where do you stand with the New Jersey Devils?
Well, right now with New Jersey, I'm kind of out in left field, I guess, with them. They're not really too interested in having my services, but we'd like to do something. I'm sure we could arrange something. If time comes again where this free agency thing doesn't work for me in end of August, early September, I'd have to seriously look at going to camp with them just to be out somewhere and then do a deal with them where I could, be traded by a certain point in the year. And if I wasn't, then, I became an unconditional free agent, or we'd work on something from there. But, things haven't
been able to be worked out with any other team, which is kind of surprising, but you know, we're being patient with it, which, you know, I wasn't really that patient last summer. They've offered to have me sign a contract and then deal me right away. But if I didn't want to sign the contract, then, you know, that I'd have to sit at home. And that might not sound like such a bad idea, but first of all, you know, you have no bargaining power then. You just sign on a dotted line. And second of all, you know, unless you know, we'd put it in writing, but you're kind of leaving yourself wide open to be dealt with at their disposal, whereas at least I have a few cards to play with, leaving it this way.
Has there been interest from other groups?
Oh yes, there's been you know, a fair amount of interest. I mean, we're not talking about an all-star hockey player here. I mean, I understand what kind of player I am, but you know, I think that I can play, and I think in the American League last year, I showed that, you know, that I can play at a high level down there, which, you know, should give me an opportunity to play in the show again. But, you know, it's up to them. It's at their discretion right now. We have talked to several other teams. Other teams have approached New Jersey, but teams, the way they look at things is, you know, one day you're hot, and if they can't get the deal done right away, and they move on, you know. They get excited about you for a while, and you have to make the deal while they're excited about you. If it goes on for a couple weeks, 3-4 weeks, and nothing really happens, they can't get a hold of each other, or, you know, New Jersey, say, wants too much, then teams are just going to say, well, to heck with it, and we'll go and get another player to fill that position.
Everybody I've talked to, they're pretty excited about this year in the hockey school. Tell us what you can be excited about, what's happening this year.
Well, actually, our registration is very high this year, which is usually not the case. Although last 2 or 3 years we've been running close to capacity. We're not quite sure what our capacity is yet, but you know, we are very excited. I mean, this thing's really taken off, and the guys just love to do it, and we really look forward to it. I mean, at the end of the hockey school, and the things we look forward to doing next, other than fishing and a little bit and some golf, is get back out there on the ice with the kids. And we got kids coming from all over the place this year, all over the Northwest. I mean, we don't expect to draw kids from, you know, down south, but we get kids from Prince Rupert, Kitimat, Terrace, obviously, a lot of kids. We're getting kids from up north. We get kids as far away as Burns Lake, Prince George, which is very good. And the nice thing about it is it's a hockey school, and we try and let the kids have a lot of fun. And that's the main thing. I mean, we get out there, and I'm sure we get upset at them every once in a while, but that's part of learning. You have to be able to get their attention.
Are you prepared to give up the dream of playing hockey and pursue other paths?
Well, I gave it up for a while, and then I went back. You know, you never realize how good you got something until you don't have it anymore. And I talked to Wade, you know, pretty well once a week when we're out playing hockey, and I was talking to him while he was playing, and you know, I mean, when one of your best friends is playing, and that's all you guys have ever done is played hockey, and you're, well, what I was doing is serving up pizzas down in Vancouver. You know, that's a quick reality wake-up call, and I got one last fall, and I looked at it and I said, if I had to do this, then that's the way it is. I'm not going to look back and say, geez, I should have done this, I should have done that.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.